Anand Bhatt is a musician and activist who was named one of the top 5 Indian Americans to watch in Hollywood. He is the first musician of Indian origin to be inducted into the Latin Grammys. In today's talk, Neha Pania talks to Mr. Bhatt.
DJ takes me back to when we fell in love. He played our favorite song, we couldn't get enough. We both would dance till the sun came up. We were both so young and in love.
Welcome to the show, Anand.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I am an Indian American, born and raised in Chicago, and I'm a musician. And I grew up listening to both Latin music as well as whatever Bollywood songs were going on in the house when I was little.
So what led to your interest in music?
In music in general?
In music, yes, in music in general.
I grew up in, I'm dating myself here, I guess I was very little in the late 70s, and my parents were disco parents. So there was always cool music going on in the background of the house, and and obviously if we'd watch Hindi movies have to have a musical segment every 30 minutes. And when you're really little, that's fun, right? So I would get up and dance to whenever, Amitabh Bachchan was on the screen or something.
So how about your interest in Latin American music?
Well, I've always loved Latin music. Beat-wise, it kind of matches up. It's pretty similar. And, to be honest with you, I got into Latin music to impress a girl.
Yeah. Of course.
So, and it stuck, and I really dug it. And back then the songs were, Rico Suave and
right.
Selena, was big.
So that was around your high school when you became interested in Latin American music?
I kind of always really dug it. I guess when I went full force and tried to actually focus on learning Spanish and playing the music, that would be high school.
And how about instruments? When did you play your first instrument?
I'm going to say about 6. I was into the violin. And not because, I thought the violin was the greatest thing ever. I had one of my little friends was playing the violin and he brought it to show and tell. And so I'm like, well, if Frank gets a violin, I want one too. So I went home, bugged my parents to get me violin lessons.
And then violin lessons, and from there, what came next?
It was violin for a long time, and I picked up the guitar when I was about 12 or 13.
And guitar lessons, or I've known a lot of people that have taught guitar.
No, yeah, I didn't take lessons.
Okay.
Yeah, I was pretty snotty with all that violin work, so I figured I knew music theory. And again, it was to impress girls. It's pretty embarrassing to admit. But I remember my sister, watching my older sister and her friends sitting around talking about how hot Bon Jovi was and whatever they listened to at the time, Skid Row. I'm like, oh, well, I better learn how to play this thing then.
When was your first performance?
My first, not counting school recitals, my first real performance, I want to say, was probably junior high school, so around 14, 15.
And at that time, I'm sure your parents saw your deep interest in music. And being Indian parents, what was their reaction?
Yeah, I think it drove them nuts. They'll never admit it now, but I think it drove them crazy. It's funny because when you're little and you're just taking violin, that's just a nice academic thing to do. Then all of a sudden you're growing your hair and getting your ear pierced and playing in bands. It's a whole different deal there. And I think they're still in denial about it for a bit. I'm sure they're like, okay, well, Anand likes music. He'll still go to med school like a normal kid. Right? And, and nothing will come of it. It's just a hobby for him. But in high school, I got on the radio for the first time. And I almost didn't want to go to college. They're Indian parents. Thank God. They forced me to go anyway. But I think I drove them
And
crazy.
what did you major in when you actually did go to
pre-med,
college?
Of course.
Did
pre-med,
you really?
biochem. What else is there?
So now, did you minor in music?
No, I didn't.
Pre-med.
I still played, I sang in the choir in college, but pre-med biochem, that didn't last too long. It's a lot harder than you give it credit for, right? So I ended up getting a degree in like biopsych.
Okay. So then you continued playing, and when did you start touring?
During college, actually. So somehow I managed to get my degree, and I started grad school for neuroscience. But at that point, I was already in a couple popular bands. I'm already touring, you know, already getting radio gigs, and so I wouldn't be in town. I wouldn't go to class. I would just come back in time to take these exams, and I'd do whatever the bare minimum, and it would drive advisors nuts. I'm sure you know in graduate school, right? They don't care if you're doing okay. They want you to be there and play the game. So it would drive them nuts, and they just wouldn't pass my research, and it was just obnoxious. I butted head to head, and I don't deal well with authority to begin with, which is why it's good I'm a musician. I don't think I could handle a day job. I'm very bad with authority. So I would butt heads with these advisors on a daily basis, you know, and they didn't dig it. So I actually left the neuro department to go into IT, because like everyone else, that's where you go, from medicine to IT. But I was actually very lucky. The IT department over there was going to let me continue my research just in their department and get out with a master's quickly. That was my goal.
Okay. But you were telling me about when you started really performing and that took off. So it happened.
That happened
after college.
that happened probably during college and grad school, around that time.
And at that time, you decided to take it full on, making this your career.
Yeah,
per se.
I was still trying to balance it. In my head, I'm like, all right, I can do this, right? I can still, you know, at least get a graduate degree and maybe some sort of day job and do this, but that was very unrealistic, because the music business is more demanding than you give it credit for. And at that time, I was playing in pretty hardcore metal bands.
Okay.
And we just pile into a bus and go off from city to city, and I'd be gone for weeks, right? So you really can't handle a day job and do that at the same time.
And at that time, you made a decision.
That's when I made, the clear-cut decision at that point. I did try a day job for a while, which actually helped. I lasted all of 6 months in the corporate setting.
It's not easy.
Yeah, no, I couldn't do it. And you know, and again, coming from a musician's perspective, where people really let me do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do.
Right.
Even if I'm doing something stupid, nobody's going to tell me.
Right.
Right. So it's the complete opposite in corporate America, and so I would get in trouble. It was like being a junior high kid. I would literally get called into somebody's office and get in trouble because, you know, I angered somebody's client because I took some initiative to send out some marketing on my own without getting it passed through the marketing department, right? I just.
So you were saying initially you were playing in a lot of metal bands, right? And then you made this transition into Latin American music
into
as
Latin
well.
American and pop, yeah.
And how did that happen?
That was actually a very natural type of thing. You know, as I got older, I just stopped playing a lot of heavier music. And you know, being in a metal band, it's a lot of aggressive work, and it doesn't pay very well. So it's almost like being a jazz musician. I mean, you can play every day, and the best you'll get is some grocery money. You can be in the most popular metal band ever, and there's really a ceiling to where you go professionally.
But then in the Latin American community, now they've accepted you
It's the
wholeheartedly.
complete opposite with the Latin American community, right? There's kind of a Chris Rock joke that I like to make with that, right? With you know, with Latin American music or pop music, the sky's the limit. But with metal, the limit's the sky, right? So, right? And that's a Chris Rock joke.